Hey, hello everyone and welcome to Extreme Graphics Tech. My name is Angelo and today is my birthday. Yes, today is my birthday and I am not sure why I'm making this video today, but I wanted to share it with all of you. So let me start telling you why this $400 PC came about. The other day, a friend of mine called me to ask me for advice on buying some new parts. He wanted to update some of the parts of his PC, so upgrade some of them. But what he wanted to upgrade was only the CPU, the RAM, and the motherboard. And obviously, the cooler that came with the CPU. So, fine. I recommended him the parts that I think, but for the budget he wanted, and he bought them. And then I asked him, what are you going to do with the old PC parts? And he said to me, well, I'm going to sell them. If you want them, let me know. And I said, okay, let me know what you have. So he said the parts the CPU was an i5 6500. He has 16 gigs of DDR4 to 2400 megahertz, and well, just a quite nice motherboard, just quite okay motherboard, and a nice fan cooler. In this case, it's an Enermax, I think, for that. So I said, yeah, sure, give it to me, because I like to give like a second life to this sort of PC. And being a quad core, I wasn't thinking like this could be much of a gaming PC nowadays, but I could use it like for an emulation machine or anything like that. So he brought it to me. When he gave it to me, he didn't give me a price. He said to me, I don't know how much this stuff costs. Just tell me what you think is a fair price and then let me know. So after he gave it to me, I started checking some of the components and I realized that, wow, this is not as expensive as I thought it was going to be. By checking, to give him a fair price. I don't want to give him too much, but I also don't want to give him like I don't feel it's enough. So by checking prices, I came with, an average of what I think each of the components he sold me cost. And you can find the CPU for $20. And the motherboard, you can get it for around $40 to $50. The RAM being used and being DDR4 2400, you can get it for around $30. And then you have the cooler, which you can add $10 or whatever to it. So that, let's just say this is the full combo. I will say is around $100. I think it's a fair price for it. So after thinking about it, I said, can I put together a gaming PC with this CPU for less or equal to $400? So I started looking for some components. Of course, they are used. Not all of them that we are going to be using today are used, but for the GPU, yeah, you need to go to the used market if you want to be on budget and have something quite nice. So by looking at the market, I saw that my RX 5600 XT, you can get it today for around $120. Obviously, you can always get it for more or less, but that's the average price I saw on eBay. Then for the rest of the components, I decided to buy new. I didn't want to buy a used case, a used hard drive, or a used power supplies, because you never know what you're going to get there, and then you can use it for 2 days and they can die. So I decided to go for new parts, but if you want, you can hunt for used parts or better price different components. So for the NVMe, I decided to put a 1 terabyte one, not the fastest one, but it's still a quite a good one that is going to be much faster than any mechanical or SATA SSD. Then the case, well, in this case, you can get anything cheap if you just want to put the components in and you're not looking for looks. It's just around $50 to $40 too, and the power supply is around $60. So all of these combined give us a computer that will cost you $400. But I wasn't sure what to expect, because this is a quad-core CPU, and it's a pure quad-core CPU. What that means is 4 cores and 4 threads. It's not like an i7 version that has 4 core, 8 threads. And in quad-core, even with multi-thread today, the hyper-threading today, are not the best for gaming. You require at least a 6-core CPU, or that's my minimum recommendation. So I wasn't sure what to expect, but considering this is supposed to be a budget PC, I wanted to give it a chance. And these were the results. And here we are. I'm starting a little bit high since I'm testing with one of the most heavy titles that there are, which is in this case the Cyberpunk 2077. And Well, I don't know if I feel disappointed or what was expecting exactly, but as you can see, the CPU is able to get to 60 FPS at some points, and I know that we have no GPU limitation, but you are not going to be able to get 60 FPS stable with the CPU no matter what you do. I try every single configuration possible and there was no chance. However, as you can see, I wouldn't call this a lose, considering you can play at more than 30 FPS, and depending if you have a VRR monitor or not, you can enjoy maybe 40 to 50 FPS or 60 sometimes, but yeah, it's not ideal. When we check Dying Light 2, then this is a different story. I was quite surprised, to be honest, here, and after coming from Cyberpunk, I was expecting, for the CPU to be again some sort of bottleneck and having to put the game at 30 FPS, so I went with high graphical settings. However, you can see here that the CPU is able to hold 60 FPS no problems, and that those small drops that you get from time to time are more due to the fact that the GPU or the graphical fidelity is a little bit too high. I was expecting, as I said, to go 30 FPS, and then I went a little bit overboard with the graphical settings. So this is a surprising result for this little CPU. For Horizon Zero Dawn, I was expecting the worst. This is a game that is quite CPU intensive, but you can see here, even in these big areas, open areas, and with high views and everything, you can play at 60 FPS. However, I have to say, one of the Achilles heel of this CPU is because it's only 4 cores. When the game has to load data, any game, and decompress it, you're going to get some stuttering depending on the game. This is going to affect more or less, because while decompressing, the game basically have to use all cores to be able to load the data. So it's important for this sort of machines to have at least 16 gigs of RAM, otherwise you're going to get on a constant bottleneck on textures and other stuff. Well, for Forza Horizon 5, we know this is one of the best better optimized games there is. We are playing here 60 FPS, no problems, in one of the most heavy areas with lots of cars on the screen, and the CPU is barely being utilized. The GPU, I mean. The CPU is, getting to 80%, 90%, 70%, but it's holding quite good. So this is a very optimized game that you're going to be able to play even with this quad-core CPU, no problem whatsoever. And I think if you can even go higher on the graphical settings, maybe not on distance view, because that will put more geometry, which will cause the CPU maybe to go under 60, but in 1440p high is just perfect. Gears 5 is another one of those games that run like a dream. Honestly, this game looks phenomenal. The game is also quite good, the action is frantic, and the game just runs beautiful. You can see here how we're running between 59 and 60 FPS all the time, and I don't think anyone would be able to notice those drops if it wasn't because of the counter. The game just runs extremely good. I think those little drops are due, as I said, for some stream assets from hard drive or something. So as I said, this is a budget CPU, but it's important to have a budget PC, but it's still important to have good RAM, at least a good amount, and also an NVMe drive, how we're doing here to try to minimize these problems. Now, this is the game I'm going to take more time to talk about because it quite surprised me when I started this save game and I saw a perfect 60 FPS, not only on this area but also on the previous area of the game. I was like super surprised to see this game running at 60 FPS with this CPU. I wasn't expecting that because my experience with this game is that it's very CPU heavy. So because I didn't believe what I was seeing, obviously I wanted to test a different area of the game. Normally I have different save games, my own for what I'm playing and also a different one for when I'm testing, because I don't want to test the game too much in advance in order for to not spoil anything. However, then I went to this area here, which is I think it's the second or third chapter. At the beginning, well, we saw the game running at around 47 FPS, then it goes to 60 FPS in this. I'm surprised that this quad-core CPU is even able to ever hit 60. However, I then went to one of the heaviest areas in the game, and now we can see that the game is running at around 35 to 45 FPS in this area, because it's one of the most heavy, and you can see the CPU going above 95% utilization. However, I still think it's very good considering the consoles are limited at 30 FPS, which makes, it's not clear as to why a quad-core CPU can hit this frame and a console is so limited and don't have a 60 FPS option. In the case of Guardians of the Galaxy, well, the games can get to 60, but it's normally going to be going around 45 to 60 FPS. The biggest problem the game has is that, as I said previously, the game is going to stream a lot of assets, and when that happens, the game is going to stutter. So this is one of the reasons I recommend a lot to have 16 gigs of RAM and a fast NVMe, because I don't know how bad this is going to be on a normal drive or with 8 gigs of RAM. So yeah, this normally happens mostly during a movie, so it's not intrusive in that, and while you're playing you're not going to be seeing this, but I'm trying to give you the better experience. On the case of Spider-Man, we know it's a very CPU heavy game, so I was a little bit worried. However, the results here are better than I expected. We can get 60 FPS for large areas of the game, when you're not having those big views or you're moving very fast through the world, because that's when data needs to be streamed. But as soon as you start moving around there, the frame rate can dip in the lower 50, but it's not as bad as I was thinking it was going to be with this quad core. As you can see, we can get to 52 FPS, so that's not that bad, all things considered. And if you have a VRR monitor, you're set, you're not going to have too much problems with this. So yeah, this i5 keeps surprising me. Modern Warfare 2 was probably the biggest letdown of all the benchmarks, because I was honestly expecting it to be above 60 FPS. But however, that was not the case. This game ran between 40 and 65 FPS, which is not ideal in these sort of games, and I'm not quite sure as to why. It's not a GPU limitation, because we can see that the GPU is basically, at 60%. However, I am not sure if there is any option in the game that allows you to lower CPU utilization. Maybe there is an option I didn't understand or I couldn't change or something. Maybe one of you out there can tell me, if this is so CPU heavy game, because I wasn't expecting this, to be honest. So then I tried Red Dead Redemption 2. Of course I was going to try Red Dead Redemption 2, and you know what? I think this CPU, this PC can run this game quite good actually. We are almost always above 50 FPS, sometimes close to 60, and we have to remember this is one of the more heavy areas in the game when it comes to CPU and geometry, because of everything that is happening on the screen and all the buildings and everything. So when you are on open spaces, the game will run better and locked to 60 FPS. So to me, this is another win for this PC, considering it's 400, and you cannot play this on consoles above 30 FPS. So this is a very good result in my opinion. And to take out the bad flavor of the bad taste that Modern Warfare put in my mouth, I tried Doom Eternal, and what to say, this game just run so beautiful. This game didn't lose a bit. You can see the game is running at 60 perfect FPS, and we probably have room for a lot more. As you can see there, even for the GPU, we can probably get to 100 FPS easily with this game and this computer. But I just wanted to test it and be sure that we can hit 60 constant, and well, and this is what we got. One of the most optimized games there is out there. And after seeing the results, I have to say I was pleasantly surprised, more than I thought I was going to be. Some of the games really I wasn't expecting to be as good as they were. My goal, as I said, was to get to 60 FPS, not like show that you can get to 120. I think a 60 FPS experience is good. And yes, when I started with Cyberpunk, I said, things are going to be rough, because there was no way for me to get 60 FPS stable in that game. The CPU was the limiting factor, but still you can get a good experience if you have like a VRR monitor, or if you limit the game to 30 FPS or to any other FPS you have around your monitor, like 40 maybe. So yeah, 30 to 60 FPS is how this move. It could get to 60 at some points, but it's not sustained. So I was a little bit worried, but then I started seeing other games like Dying Light 2 or Forza Motorsport getting to 60 FPS, no problems, and in some cases the limiting factor was the GPU. I think I went a little bit overboard on Dying Light with the graphical settings, thinking, you know, if the CPU is not going to be enough, I better max out the GPU, and that's exactly what happened. The GPU was being maxed out while the CPU still have some life in it. And I wasn't expecting this CPU to behave as good as it did. We can get a 60 FPS stable at 1440p on Forza Motorsport, on Forza Horizon 5, which really surprised me. And then when we tested a Plague Tale Requiem, also was like, what? This is crazy, you know, we got to 60 FPS on some parts of the game. I know on the more heavier one you get to like 35, but you know, consoles are limited to 30 FPS, so you know, if you don't mind having maybe VSync problems, or if you have a VRR monitor, you can have a more than 30 FPS experience with this little thing. So, you know, after testing all these games, I was very surprised by the capabilities of the CPU. So for eSport games, this is going to run like a dream. And I think for $400, we have achieved a very nice balance of a computer. Yeah, maybe the CPU could be a little bit better, maybe a 6700 or a 7700, but they get quite expensive, all considered. They get up to $80 and $120 extra. So yeah, I don't know, this is just a $20 CPU, so I think for that amount of money it's doing quite good if you ask me. Of course, maybe you can go AMD with a pure quad core, but then you will have to buy, you know, better RAM, faster RAM, newer RAM, a different motherboard. So I had this combo for around $100. And for what it's worth, you know, it's a machine that I can use to test. It's a machine that I can use to create like an emulation machine, maybe for arcades, and up to Wii U, maybe, probably. GameCube and GameCube and Wii and anything under is going to run no problem whatsoever. PlayStation 3, maybe one game or the other. Not sure about Nintendo Switch. I don't think it will be enough, but well, I can try that if many of you are interested on me testing this for emulation purposes. However, you know, as I say, $400 for this machine seems to be reasonable, and I was pleasantly surprised by the capabilities of this PC. And I don't have to tell you that for anything else like work, watching videos on YouTube or everything, this machine works more than okay. I don't think it's going to be enough for streaming unless you use the GPU maybe as the video compressor, because the CPU is not going to be as good, but you know, for editing videos and stuff like that offline, I don't think it should be that much of a problem. So having said this, I hope you like this video and that it has inspired you to maybe go and buy your own used computer for as cheap as possible, because yes, PC is becoming very complicated these days. It's a very expensive hobby nowadays with the prices of GPUs, but you know, we can still squeeze some nice deals around. Thank you very much, and see you on the next video.